There was an expectation in the early church that the second glorious coming of Jesus was going to happen soon. And especially after the temple was destroyed in the year 70, that great symbol of the Hebrew faith, people thought it was around the corner that the Messiah was going to return and wrap it all up. Obviously, that return was delayed somewhat. But there were some very practical people at the time, and they said, well, if he's coming, I don't really need to go to work. I think I'll take the day off. I'll phone in sick. I need a rest day. I mean, if I have some savings, I'll just use that up. I mean, no sense saving for what? And that prompted Paul to write this letter to his community in Thessalonian, and says, well, if they're not going to work, let them not eat. Let's see how long that lasts. See how well they do with that. Now, Paul's message was rather clear, and that is, you keep living your Christian life. You keep living as Christ asked you to live, and when that time is for the human enterprise to be wrapped up, that's none of our business. God will do it in his own time, in his own way, and it's not our business. I'm sure by this time most of you are well aware that the strong imagery that is used in the scriptures describing the last days and the last times, plagues and earthquakes and great wars and tribulations and the sun, giving way and things blowing up in the universe, that all of that is not to be taken literally. Don't wait for trumpet blasts. It is a form of writing, a form of expression that was very common in the Hebrew world. You can find it in the book of Daniel. You can find it in some parts of the Gospel of Mark. You can find it in the book of Revelation. It's apocalyptic literature. It's a kind of writing to express a great event, but not in literal terms. Yeah, we have those kind of things. We have science fiction. It's a kind of writing. You don't expect that to be taken literally. How are we to act in the face of the end times? Both the end times for the human enterprise and our own end time. I think there are three things that are fairly clear from the whole pattern of the scriptures. First of all, we should not be busy about trying to figure out when the end time will be. Some people seem to think that given the election this week, it's already here. And so they fight against it. That's not our business. We leave that into the hands of God. Secondly, we are to continue to live as Christians. We are to continue to live as disciples of Jesus, day by day, preparing for our own journey home, preparing for our own reception into the kingdom, the banquet of heaven. And we do that especially by the way in which we care for others, the way in which we reach out to the members of our families, the people that are alienated from us, the people where there are divisions, or people that are hurting, people that just take up our time, our energy, the way in which we reach out to them and regard them as the very living faiths of Christ. That's how we continue to live our day-to-day Christian life, our ordinary one-on-one day of life. That's how we prepare for, walk toward the kingdom. I mean, getting into heaven is not a slide, it's a climb. It's not floating on your back in the water, it's swimming. And it's not pushing a button on an elevator, it's stairs and banisters. One at a time, day by day. And the third thing I think is clear is, for our individual lives, keep your bags packed. Be ready to go when the Lord calls. not trying to anticipate when that will be or how that will be. Just be ready. I mean, if someone asks, and it's a good thing to think about every so often, if you knew you had a week to live, what would you do? What would you do differently than what you're doing now? Hopefully, the answer is not much. Not much. That what I'm doing now is the way in which I want to prepare, the way in which I'm ready for, the way in which I'm open to whatever God wants, whenever God calls. If I have to say, well, no, there's a couple of relationships I'd want to kind of heal, do it now. There's something I'd really want to ask the Lord's forgiveness for, do it now. There's someone I really need to reach out to, do it now. So that when that question is asked, and I think every couple times a year we need to think about that. If I am going to be called home in a week, what would I do differently? Maybe I would take a day off. But in terms of the way in which I relate, the way in which I act, the way in which I conduct myself, there shouldn't be a lot of difference. The world is not going to end tomorrow, most likely. My world might. One of these days it will. But the reality is, it is the Lord who's in charge of it all. The Lord who enables us to journey. The Lord who strengthens us, forgives us, heals us, calls us, encourages us along this pathway, this pilgrimage that we're on, for the joy that comes when the journey is ended and we are finally totally at peace and at home.